Words are violence. Words are violence, I say, as I'm doing real violence and defending said real violence. It doesn't make any sense.
Attention! Tribunal!
Successful prosecutions for war crimes are rare and momentous markers of the past century's darkest times. At Nuremberg, the surviving Nazi leaders.
The privilege of opening the first trial in history for crimes against the peace of the world.
The warmongers of the former Yugoslavia and the perpetrators of the Rwandan genocide. And now...
What the fuck is wrong with r/World News? People are just justifying AP offices being seized because AP went along with Hamas on October 7th. Bro, r/World News is literally the Nazi newspaper, okay? They are all little Adolf Hitlers in there. That's it. They're fucking fascists, brother. That's it. A lot of these guys are just like fascist but gay. So they think mistakenly that like, oh, I'm gay and I love gay people, so I obviously can't be a fucking Nazi. No, you can, dude. You literally are. Those people literally think that because they're liberal and because they think that they're like really progressive, that they themselves are not being fucking fascists while defending the fascist Zionist project.
If International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan's request is granted, the next trials may be of those responsible for the war in Gaza. The leaders of Hamas for its murderous assault last October, and of Israel for what followed.
It's so funny to fucking complain about AP being there for October 7 when, like, that's evidence, dipshits. Hey, dumbasses who are mad that journalists are fucking covering actions that are occurring in real time. You should be thanking them instead of fucking complaining, because that is, in many instances, some of the only ways that victims can get some level of closure. That's what news reporters do. And they're very brave for being able to do that.
My office submits that there are reasonable grounds to believe that these three Hamas leaders are criminally responsible for the killing of Israeli civilians in attacks perpetrated by Hamas and other armed groups on the 7th of October 2023. I have reasonable grounds to believe, on the basis of evidence collected and examined by my office, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant bear criminal responsibility. The crimes include starvation of civilians as a method of warfare.
Internationally, it's a huge blow for the Israelis. It's only going to reinforce the international tsunami of opinion that argues that Israel has been committing war crimes and needs to be taken into account.
Aaron David Miller is a former analyst and negotiator with the US State Department.
At home in Israel, the impact, it'd be fascinating to see how it plays out.
אנחנו בעיצומה של מערכה על קיומנו.
Prosecutors won't be looking just at what happened on the ground. They'll take into account what the leaders said.
אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם.
Israel's rhetoric, I think, has left itself open unnecessarily. When you talk about siege.
Yeah, it's just rhetoric, bro. It's just rhetoric. Listen, guys, you know, when one Hamas leader in Lebanon says, literally, like at this point 7 months ago, says Israel's actions against the Palestinian population justify 1,000 October 7s. That's genocide. That's genocide. That's not rhetoric. That's genocide. They're literally doing a genocide. I promise you that's genocide. Let's recycle that over and over again. Every single fucking day For the past 8 months, as Israel's done an ethnic cleansing campaign, they've literally said 1,000,000 times worse shit. That's not genocide. That's just rhetoric. That's rhetoric that they're acting out. By the way, it's not just rhetoric because they did that shit.
When you talk about cutting off all of the water to Gaza because they're murderers or worse, you feed this sort of legal effort.
I think it's the right thing to do. It hasn't been a political decision. It's been one based on the law and the facts as they exist.
Retired Sydney magistrate Graham Blewett is a former deputy prosecutor.
He fucking blew it, mate.
With the International Criminal Tribunal in The Hague, the precursor of the International Criminal Court. He helped prosecute former Serbian leader Slobodan Milosevic.
We were told he would never be in The Hague.
Bro, every leader that has played a role in the Milosevic, every prosecutor, every person that's played a role in the Milosevic trials has literally said the Israel stuff is so open and fucking shut. It's not even funny. Like, there is not even a comparison you can make between Milosevic and Israel because of how much Israel has like voluntarily revealed their genocidal intent.
But he ended up in The Hague because he lost the elections in Serbia, and the political opponents were only too eager to get rid of him and send him to The Hague. There's nothing to say that something like that won't happen in respect of Israel and the Hamas leaders.
Mr. Netanyahu says the prosecutor's actions are absurd.
Mr. Khan creates a twisted and false moral equivalence between the leaders of Israel and the henchmen of Hamas.
Announcing it with the Israelis and the Hamas leaders at the same time, I think, provides some sort of balance and will be easier, in my view, to defend the position of the prosecutor to bring these indictments at this point in time.
Inside Israel, protests against Mr. Netanyahu are becoming more frequent and intense.
The growing consensus that the war is continuing in order to preserve Netanyahu's political position rather than for the sake of Israeli security. A sense that Netanyahu has abandoned the hostages, which is creating ever more public anger and protest.
Netanyahu's critics, his real critics, the ones who are never Netanyahu's, will say that basically this simply adds to the notion that the prime minister needs to go.
Just days ago, War Cabinet member Benny Gantz threatened to withdraw support from Mr. Netanyahu. The announcement from The Hague has prompted his defence of the Prime Minister.
I think a lot of people need to understand something very important here. Like, I am not ever going to take for granted international organs of justice being on my side, okay? And you mustn't either. I am still very skeptical about what will happen. Make no mistake, I'm not saying that like Benjamin Netanyahu is going to get fucking arrested or anything like that. We still don't know what the 3 judges are going to say for the application of this arrest warrant. Ultimately, this is still a very political court, obviously. And the way that this court has existed in its history has always been, in many respects, like advocating for the rule of law only against America's enemies, only against those who are outside of America's sphere of influence. I'll give you an example. Saudi Arabia never gets fucking brought up on charges or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's mostly, in the words of Karim Khan, according to a senior U.S. official that's told him, it's for Africa and thugs like Putin, right? Is anyone legally obliged to enforce the arrest? Yes and no. There's a Rome Statute. The Rome Statute countries, which is, I believe, 124 nations, most countries in Europe that are signed on for it, do have the obligation to arrest. Do have the obligation to arrest 144 do have the obligation to arrest a leader unless they say they won't do it. But as far as I understand, France and even Germany has defended the ICC recently. America is not a part of it. Israel's not a part of it. Qatar is not a part of it either, obviously, which is the other side of the equation, because the political leadership of Hamas is in Qatar and is playing a formative role in the ceasefire negotiations process. The moral equivalence take is such a desperate take. They're so fucking cooked. Yeah, there is no moral equivalence between what Hamas has done and what Israel is doing because Israel is significantly worse. The ICC is the International Criminal Court. Karim Khan is a prosecutor for the International Criminal Court in 2021. According to Times of Israel and according to other numerous outlets that reported on it, Karim Khan was slated to replace the Gambian prosecutor that America had actually, under the Trump administration, sanctioned. She was considered controversial, partially due to the fact that she was investigating Israel and was even investigating Americans. Now, Karim Khan was petitioned by the United States and the UK. The United States is not even a fucking part of the ICC's jurisdiction, according to the United States. The United States has a law specifically that dictates that they will invade the fucking Hague, the Netherlands, if any American service member, diplomat, or ally is ever brought on charge of the ICC for war crimes and extradited. America will invade the Netherlands. That is in the books. Why is U.S. not a part of the Rome Statute? Because we are the bad guys. Hopefully that is clear. The international rule-based order dictates that the United States of America makes the rules and gives the orders. Never forget. Yes, Israel is technically under the umbrella of allies, allied nations. It's NATO nations and non-NATO aligned nations such as like Australia and whatnot, and even Israel. Wait, what? Miss what you said about the Netherlands? I said America is coming, baby. Like you got some ripe new oil fields or something. We will fucking invade your country if you arrest or try to extradite an American or an America-aligned region's leadership, service members, anything. Anyone and everyone.
טרוריסטים צמאי דם היא עיוורון מוסרי ופגיעה בחובתה ויכולתה להגן על אזרחיה.
Within Israel, the impact of the ICC's actions on public opinion are unpredictable.
Most Israelis do not consider themselves genocide heirs. I mean, they're prosecuting a war against a vicious terror organization. Israeli rules of engagement clearly have been expanded.
The original justification for the war is to defend the state of Israel against a hostile military force, a semi-state that invaded it and that continued to fire rockets at it. And I don't think that any elected government in any country in the world could have avoided going to war against such a force. The question is, even after the government made all the mistakes that led to the war, is all the mistakes that it has made in managing that war.
A panel of judges in The Hague must now decide whether to issue arrest warrants against the Israeli and Hamas leaders.
The mere existence of these arrest warrants, if they're issued, will prevent these leaders, the Hamas and Israeli leaders, from leaving their country. It's going to be even more difficult in the case of the Israelis because Israel is not a party to the ICC.
The ICC prosecutor argues that the court has jurisdiction over Palestine.
There is a legal obligation to surrender those Hamas leaders if they're arrested. But who will do that? Given the fracture between Hamas and the Palestinian leadership, it's hard to envisage.
If arrest warrants are granted, a greater challenge follows.
Since the ICC has no police force to enforce them, that individual governments would have to make a decision to arrest a sitting Israeli prime minister. So the whole situation is fraught, and I think it reinforces the fact that we are now in a huge strategic cul-de-sac with no way out. And the longer this continues, the more it's going to drive everyone to their respective corners and create a huge problem about how to even begin to reconstruct a realistic pathway for Israelis and Palestinians moving forward.
Tzipi Livni is the former Vice Prime Minister of Israel and a former Justice Minister. Tzipi Livni, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you for having me.
What is your reaction to the ICC prosecutors' request for warrants against the Prime Minister and Defence Minister for war crimes and crimes against humanity?
I think that this is an immoral decision. I hope that it will not be approved.
Woke, by the way. She's the wokest of the Israeli politicians.
You know that I am a long-time Netanyahu's political opponent, and I disagree with his policy. But any equivalence between this jihadist group that massacred, burned children, raped women, deliberately.
Yeah, Tzipi Livni is a liberal that was a part of the Annapolis negotiations. The fact that she hates Bibi but hates the ICC more shows why there has never been an agreement between the two sides. Even the most liberal Israelis cannot imagine Israel can do wrong against Palestinians. Exactly. Zionism is the boundary. Okay? Liberal Zionists, no matter how liberal they are, still cannot view a world where Palestinian humanity exists. That's very important.
Promise to do it again. And a democracy like Israel is immoral and outrageous.
The ICC's argument is that there is no moral equivalency between making these separate cases. But let me understand exactly what you're saying there. Are you saying that an Israeli prime minister, because he's part of a democratic government, should be immune from war crimes prosecution judged by an independent court?
Joel Severud, thank you for the 10
It's
gifted.
not only what I am saying. This is a basic role, which is called complementary. And this is the base for the...
Yeah. You can still, as Israel has shown us, democratically facilitate an ethnic cleansing campaign. And when your supposedly separate court system doesn't actually kick in, as you are also, your very existence and your advocacy for Israel right now and Israel's interest in Gaza personally shows the rest of the world where you guys stand on this issue, then yes, someone else has to step in. This argument would not stand for Adolf Hitler. It would not stand for any number of different countries that have democratically decided, okay, through the process of voting, decided to kill a shit ton of people and engage in a multitude of different ethnic cleansing campaigns. It's insane. The idea that Israel is a democracy is a ridiculous one to begin with, but this is why that propaganda sticks. This is why, for years and years, the notion that Israel is the most moral nation, the only democracy in the Middle East, which was never real, right? Because you cannot have a democratic process while simultaneously maintaining an apartheid, because you can only have a democracy if all of the citizens have rights. The idea that like Israel was the only democracy in the Middle East was always a silly one for this reason.
Relationship between the ICC and national courts, as long as we are dealing with a democracy like Israel, but not only, with independent courts that can put charges and willing to do so against somebody within their country, including prime minister, that is acting against the international law, this is a place where the ICC would not intervene. Now, I would like to remind you that in Israel, I was part of those that took the streets and demonstrated in order to keep Israeli courts independent. And we succeeded. And you know, one of those that wanted to promote these judicial reforms are telling us, okay, you told us that if the Israeli courts are independence, it can help Israel's security. And look what happens. So it's not, I'm not saying that what happened to Israelis on October 7th is the excuse or a reason to do something like this to others. No way. But while they are acting deliberately, and we are trying...
The fact that she's chirping about the ICC and she's got smoke for the ICC, despite genuinely despising Benjamin Netanyahu, tells you everything you need to know about Zionism. Zionism is a fascist ideology. That's it. It's ethno-supremacist. It's religious. Zionism is both ethno-supremacist, but also, I guess, religiously supremacist as well. Given the reality that Judaism is an ethno-religion, and the Zionist project ultimately is a fascist one. So no matter how liberal you are, no matter how many legitimate grievances you might have with someone like Benjamin Netanyahu, it still doesn't change the reality that when an outside institution says you can't do that, you will run defense for Benjamin Netanyahu. This is why liberal Zionism, in many respects, is depending on what your understanding of liberalism is either oxymoronic or directly what liberalism is.
Trying to avoid civil casualties, although there are civil casualties during war. But there is no moral equivalence, like there is no legal or moral equivalence between somebody who killed somebody by mistake and somebody that, a killer, a murderer that did it deliberately and tortured his victims before.
Well, let me say this. 4 judges will now decide whether these warrants should go forward. Do you have any reason to doubt the independence of the judges in the process?
So the ICC, this is not a secret. The ICC is not just a court based that is dealing with international law. There are also some political reasons or atmosphere that is unfortunately cover sometimes or shadow sometimes the decisions. But I do hope it's premature. So I do hope that this will be the time in which they will look at the evidence. And I want to say also to add something to this. I am aware and I completely disagree with some statements that were made by Israeli ministers. I detest them. I think that I criticized it. I think that it was really outrageous. But I think that the role or the legal perspective should define or make the differentiation between some statements by politicians and the real policy or how the army is acting.
Well, let me, if I may, let me just ask you a question about that, because it's clear from the information that's already been provided by the ICC. They've given some detail about what they're talking about about murder and extermination of the civilian population, depriving the civilian population of the things they need to live. A whole series of very serious charges. I want to understand this from you. Do you accept that there are legitimate criticisms of the way the Netanyahu government has conducted this war?
Yeah, I think that there's a huge difference.
Yeah, of course. She will say, of course. It's just, we have to deal with it.
Difference between criticism. I myself criticize my own government, not only for these outrageous populistic statements, but on some of the policies. But at the end of the day, the Israeli army is acting in accordance to the...
Yeah. See, there you go. The extent of the extent of the political discourse that is permissible within the framework of Zionism is that the army is incredibly important. The army can do no wrong, or even if they do wrong, we can handle it internally in our own court structure. And in instances where clearly we are not doing that, it still doesn't matter. Tzipi Livni played a central role in sabotaging maybe the only serious talks in the Oslo process. She wasted half the Annapolis talks with Abu Allah through her absurd positions on Jerusalem and refugees, and by demanding Palestine recognize Israel as a Jewish state. She played key positions in bloody assaults on Gaza and Lebanon that killed thousands of innocents. This liberal worked with Bibi and led his negotiations with John Kerry's mission, playing a big role in sabotaging those talks. But she is a liberal. Am I wrong? She presents herself as a liberal Zionist. As a matter of fact, this is one of the more woke liberal Zionists. Because under Zionism, the more you hate Benjamin Netanyahu, the more liberal you are. Same with fucking Yair Lapid. Ultimately, my point is to say that if you are a Zionist and simultaneously a liberal, you are still a fascist liberal. The notion that there is like serious political discourse happening in Israel is ridiculous when the point of contention becomes Palestinian statehood or Palestinian humanity. That is completely outside of the confines of political discourse. That is completely unacceptable. That's it. That's it. You can go as right-wing as you want on domestic affairs, whether women should be allowed to read and write, or if they should just stay at home, okay? You can go as right-wing as you want on the appropriate confines of Zionist discourse of like how hard we can kill the Palestinians. And that's precisely what this man advocates for every step of the fucking way. Only Israel will control Gaza, says National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir on his day after plan, his day after suggestions. Israel will occupy Gaza completely and fully, including Jewish settlements in the entire enclave, and encouragement of voluntary migration of Gazans. He wants to move to Gaza. That is an unimaginably far-right position. That is just straight ultra-mega Nazi shit, okay? But it's allowed in Israeli political discussion. You can go as far right as you want on the Palestinian issue, but there is a stopgap measure for how far left you can go, and that far left you can go is recognizing the humanity of Palestinians. The moment that you say, well, these are human beings, we should maybe stop killing them, all of a sudden you're completely outside of what is appropriate political conversations. Okay? There are very few parties that maintain that position in the Israeli Knesset. Their coalition is like at most 14 seats in the Knesset. That is unimaginably right-wing. I don't know how else to describe it. You're talking about fucking Nazi Germany politics at this point. After 2014, she broke with Bibi politically and joined Isaac Herzog's party to run against Netanyahu. This absolute fucking ghoul continued to be on the ugly face of the peace camp while having played a central role in sabotaging the peace process repeatedly. She was literally a Likudnik at the start of her career. Livni quit politics in 2009, if I recall correctly, but she will burn in hell. Yeah.
The international law. And we have also some examples from the past when Israeli soldiers acted in a way that violated the law, or when an Israeli civilian acted in a manner against Palestinians in a manner that violated the Israeli and international law. He or them were investigated and prosecuted. And therefore, it's not about criticism. It's about putting charges in the ICC that was established in order to give answers to horrific acts that are being made, like Hamas. We are dealing with Putin, Milosevic at the time. This is not the case.
Well, let me ask you.
Yeah, it is. You just don't want to recognize it because it is completely beyond your scope of comprehension that any matter that goes along with the Israeli Zionist project could ever be considered in the exact same light, except the rest of the world does see it in that exact same way.
Let me ask
this
you.
woman was literally part of the Second Lebanon War and Cast-led, Operation Cast-led. I'm going to lose it. Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why her position now, even though she's no longer formally involved in politics, is literally to do this kind of propaganda. That's it.
Let me ask you this then. If Mr. Netanyahu has no reason to be afraid of the decisions he made in prosecuting the war, why shouldn't he go to The Hague and make his case if the judges grant the warrants?
Because The Hague is Hamas.
Come on, we are. I'm not, the legal advisor to the Prime Minister. It's for Israel to make the decision what's Israel's next step. But as you are aware, the US and Israel are not members or didn't sign the convention that established the ICC, and therefore.
It's a neat little trick, dude. It's like, sorry, we don't subscribe to these gay ass terms like international human rights and the International Criminal Court. Sorry. I'm a liberal, by the way, and I hate Benjamin Netanyahu, but also I will 100% defend him ethnically cleansing the Palestinian population because they deserve it.
So I'm not going to give advices from the balcony.
Well, let me.
Yeah, I mean, it literally is it is Israel is doing I'm a sovereign citizen as an argument. It's just as stupid and morally bankrupt as the ridiculous claim that because Palestinians have no statehood, no formally recognized statehood, because we keep stomping that from happening, by the way, that like they can be victim to a genocide without any proper international prosecution on it. It's like those are the people we need to defend the most. What do you mean? Ridiculous. Oh, they don't have a fucking formally recognized state, so we can genocide them. Okay, thanks, man.
Let me ask you this question. Whatever you say about the ICC's action, do you accept that this is further evidence that Israel is becoming increasingly isolated in the world?
Yes, unfortunately. Unfortunately, yes. Before that, we still have the ICJ dealing with claims on genocide. And I want to reiterate, before we enter with boots on the ground.
How will the Israeli population ever reckon with this reality? I fear so many are so far gone. It's so crazy, especially when you can wrap up your genocidal ambition and all of the criticisms launched against that with anti-Semitism. You could just say, no, they're anti-Semitic. All right, this lady just made me do a 360 on liberals. I understand that the liberal Zionist shit you're talking about now. Thank you. All right, I get what you're saying now. Like, liberal Zionists will talk about how much they love gay people. Okay, it's called pink washing or greenwashing. They'll talk about how environmentally conscious they are in an effort to dupe other like-minded liberals elsewhere to be on. Well, 360 is back to the same point. He meant 180. Anyway, while simultaneously, obviously killing a shit ton of gay Palestinians too. It's not like the bombs are avoiding fucking killing gay Palestinians. Israel itself is also Israel also has a tendency to blackmail gay Palestinians into becoming informants for themselves too. So it's just like all of it is ridiculous.
Ground to Gaza, we asked the population to leave places knowing that we are going to act there, and we wanted to minimize the collateral or the damage for civilians. And it's not only that. I see young people chanting from the river to the sea, and they don't understand.
It's like, dude, you're literally defending killing 35,000 plus Palestinians over the course of the past 8 months and saying that's not genocidal, while simultaneously decrying that saying from the river to the sea, Palestinians will be free or Palestine will be free is actually the real genocide that's occurring. Words are violence. Words are violence, I say, as I'm doing real violence and defending said real violence. It doesn't make any sense. And I think the key factor here is the recognition. The recognition that Palestinians are human beings worthy of dignity, worthy of emancipation. They have the same exact fucking dreams when they put their head on the pillow at night that you do. Okay? They want shelter. They want a meaningful life. They want to be able to work. They want to have a sense of purpose in life. When you come to that recognition, all of a sudden, it becomes pretty clear it is unimaginably cruel to kill 35,000 of them. It is unimaginably cruel to trap them in an apartheid structure for 75 fucking years, not allowing them to return to their homes, killing them when they try to do so in the early stages, slowly but surely taking away more and more of their lands. Every step of the way saying, well, you deserve this. You deserve this. And if anyone, God forbid, resists, you deliver to them a retaliation that is 10 times, 20 times, 30 times more violent.
Understand that Hamas does not represent any legitimate cause of the Palestinians. I negotiated twice peace treaty with the Palestinians.
I think I just have to jump in there, because I think we need to make a clear distinction in our conversation between the...
There were Holocaust survivors who sided with Mandela and were named terrorists. Brother, there is a Holocaust survivor on the prosecutorial team that has been put together. An Israeli Jewish man who literally is an Israeli civil rights attorney who has been exiled from Israel for saying that Israel cannot occupy the West Bank, who played a role in, I guess, co-creating the International Criminal Court. It's ridiculous.
Allegations being made by the ICC, they do not deny Israel's right to defend itself. These charges arise from their determination that crimes have been committed against civilians in the conduct of that war. But let's stay with the politics at the moment, because as you say, you're not here to decide the policy of the Israeli government. Now, Netanyahu is clearly under some pressure to step down. Will the ICC's decision make his position weaker or stronger?
I truly don't know. Listen, I was...
Like, listen, I'm here to defend Israel, okay? Stop asking me extra questions that make it harder for me to defend Israel.
I heard about the decision. I said, okay, this is immoral, it's unjust. I'm an Israeli, and this is where I stand. All the political, a conversation, what will help Netanyahu or not, this is less important for me now. As his opponent, as somebody that completely disagree with his policy on other matters, including the policy toward the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I hope that we have elections soon and replace him and the other extremists within his government.
So,
like, you're not with it. Like, you don't hate Netanyahu. If you think that the ICC has no business prosecuting Benjamin Netanyahu, then you don't fucking hate Netanyahu. Like, it's fake. It's phony. It's bullshit. You hate Netanyahu for purely aesthetic reasons, okay? That's it. This is why I think it's, like, ridiculous. If you asked a lot of Americans, okay, if we should throw, I don't know, former presidents, current presidents in prison for doing war crimes, I feel like a decent amount of Americans would be like, actually, that's a good idea. For a multitude of different reasons. They might actually want to fucking throw Joe Biden in prison because Joe Biden is woke and gay, or ruin the economy, or whatever the fuck. But ultimately, people with, like, real grievances against the current administration would probably be on board with it. I don't know. I would. I am. I personally love that prospect. Sending American leadership to jail is, oh my God, it seems incredible.
But so finally on that, can you have a real debate when you deny the impact on civilians in Gaza of the conduct of the war?
I know, and for sure, civilians are paying the price, including in Gaza, as we did in Israel when Hamas decided to attack us. I'm not asking the world to turn a blind eye to the situation in Gaza, not at all. And I completely support any humanitarian aid to the Palestinians in Gaza. But the right comparison is not between the suffering of the people here and there, because the loss of a child for Israeli and Palestinian it's the same grief. But when you make your judgment...
Yeah, it's like, I really care about the Palestinian children, except we have to kill them. The question itself is vague and absurd. Israel has a right to exist as a what? as a state where only Jews have the right to self-determination, states carry systems and policies with them. Israel has always carried systems of Jewish supremacy, something that's evident from the fact that this right to exist always implies as a Jewish state. The important thing isn't any state's existence per se, it's replacing apartheid with systems that promote equality, freedom, and justice. Exactly.